The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the small-town diner, Betty's Place, in the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio. Emily, wearing a worn-out apron and her hair in a messy bun, poured coffee for a trucker who nodded with a tired smile. Her shifts were long, but she never complained. She had 2 daughters waiting for her at home. Emily had raised Sarah and Mia alone, ever since their father walked out without warning nearly a decade ago. She worked mornings at the diner and evenings cleaning offices downtown. They lived in a tiny rental apartment above a laundromat, bare walls, squeaky floors, and just enough space for the 3 of them. That morning, just as Emily was stacking clean plates behind the counter, her cell phone rang. She frowned. The number was familiar, but unwelcome. It was her older brother, Mark. "Dad passed away last night," he said coldly. Emily froze. She didn't feel sadness. She barely felt anything at all. Their father, Howard, had been sick for years, but no one had bothered to tell her how bad it had gotten. Mark hadn't called in months. Neither had Rachel, their younger sister. "The will is being read tomorrow," he added, "at Mr. Jennings's office. Try to be on time." He hung up before she could respond. That night, after Sarah and Mia had eaten a dinner of macaroni and cheese, Emily sat staring at the ceiling. "Was Grandpa a bad guy?" Sarah asked, her voice cautious. Emily sighed. "He wasn't bad, just distant." Mia, ever blunt, chimed in. "So why are we going to his will thing?" "Because sometimes you show up, even when you don't feel like it." The next morning, Emily walked into the lawyer's office wearing her diner uniform. She didn't have time to change. Mark and Rachel were already seated, dressed in sleek coats, sipping bottled water like they belonged in a magazine. The room smelled like old paper and expensive cologne. Mr. Jennings, the family lawyer, greeted her kindly. "Thanks for coming, Emily. Your father left something for each of you." Rachel received a vacation home in Florida. Mark got stocks and a savings account. Emily got something different. "Your father left you the deed to a property just outside town," Jennings said, sliding an envelope across the table. "It's an old auto repair shop called Howard's Garage. The building, the tools, the land, everything's yours." Mark scoffed. "That dump?" Rachel added. "It's basically a pile of rust." But Mr. Jennings continued, undeterred. "He also asked that I give you this." He handed her a small tarnished key and a folded piece of paper. Emily opened the note. It read, "What matters most isn't always shiny. Trust your gut." She slipped the key into her pocket. Later that evening, her siblings caught up to her in the parking lot. Mark smirked. "I'll give you 20 grand for that garage. Cash. Think about it." Rachel leaned against her car. "Seriously, Em, you don't want to deal with it. Just take the money." Emily looked at them both. Her instinct told her something was off. Her father hadn't given her junk. He'd given her something else. "No thanks," she said softly. "I'll go check it out myself." 2 days later, Emily and her daughters pulled up to the old property in a dusty sedan. The garage looked like it hadn't seen life in decades. The sign reading Howard's Garage was faded. Weeds climbed up the chain-link fence. "Is this it?" Sarah asked, wide-eyed. "It looks haunted," Mia whispered. Emily chuckled despite herself. "Let's take a look." She used the old key to open the padlock. The metal squeaked, resisting. Inside, the place was exactly as they expected, dusty, dark, and silent. A cracked radio sat on a shelf. Tools lay scattered across a rusty workbench. There was a smell of oil and metal that had soaked into the walls. In the back corner, there was a locked office. The same key fit. Inside was cleaner. Shelves lined with books, blueprints, and a filing cabinet. On the far wall, she spotted something curious. A small safe built into the drywall. Above it, a phrase had been scratched into the paint. "Only those who remember will understand." Mia found a photo album on a shelf. Inside were pictures of her grandfather, Howard, posing in front of foreign landmarks, Paris, Istanbul, Rio de Janeiro. always with the same serious expression. "Mom," Sarah asked, "did Grandpa travel a lot?" Emily didn't answer right away. Her father never left Ohio, as far as she knew. He never even renewed his passport. She stared at one photo in particular, Howard shaking hands with a man in uniform. The man wore a badge. The background looked like it belonged to some embassy. That night, as the girls slept on the pull-out couch, Emily sat in the office holding that photograph. Something told her this garage wasn't just a garage, it was a puzzle. And she had just found the first piece. Emily couldn't sleep that night. She sat at the tiny kitchen table in her apartment, staring at the old key and the photograph of her father with the man in uniform. Something was unraveling, something big. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she knew it wasn't just family business. The next morning, after dropping Sarah and Mia off at school, Emily returned to the garage alone. The daylight made the place feel less like a ghost story and more like a challenge. She brought gloves, a thermos of coffee, and her determination. She started cleaning. Dust flew from the shelves, cobwebs clung to her arms, and her sneakers stuck to the oil-stained floors. But beneath the grime, the garage had a strange charm, like it had been frozen in time. She imagined her father working in silence, tinkering with engines while the world outside moved on. In a corner of the office, she found a locked metal cabinet. The key she'd been given didn't fit, but she noticed the hinges were loose. With a screwdriver, she pried it open. Inside were old passports, some with her father's name, others with different aliases. There were documents in other languages, a thick notebook filled with strange numbers and codes, and a small radio with a cracked dial. Emily's hands shook. Her father had always been quiet, private. But this? Who was he? She didn't know who to turn to. Certainly not her siblings. Rachel would mock her. Mark would try to take everything. Then she remembered her childhood friend, Ben, now a high school history teacher with a hobby in cryptography. They'd lost touch over the years, but she still had his number. She called him. "Codes?" Ben said, intrigued. "Bring them over." That evening, Emily sat at Ben's cluttered kitchen table. He had maps on the walls, shelves of dusty books, and a cat that watched her from the window. He examined the notebook. "This is ciphertext, old school stuff. Some substitution, maybe even book cipher patterns. It's definitely intentional, not gibberish." Emily leaned in. "Can you crack it?" "I can try. It'll take time." She nodded. "Please, just don't tell anyone yet." Ben smiled kindly. "I won't. But Emily, this is serious. Whoever your dad was, he wasn't just fixing cars." The next few days, Emily kept going back to the garage. She cleaned, sorted papers, and slowly began to feel like the place belonged to her. One afternoon, she found an old cassette player. Inside was a tape labeled July 1986. She played it. Her father's voice came through the speaker, low and tired. He was speaking in code, letters, numbers, phrases that made no sense. But his tone was clear, calm, focused, and professional. She listened to it twice. Then she put the tape back and locked it away. Later that week, Rachel showed up at her apartment without knocking. "You're being ridiculous," she said, standing in the doorway. "Sell the garage, take the money. Mark has a buyer already lined up. They'll pay $200,000. Emily folded her arms. "I'm not selling." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Dad was delusional. You know that, right? He left you junk. Don't be stubborn." "He left me something," Emily replied, voice steady. "Something he didn't trust anyone else with." Rachel stormed out. The next day, Ben called. "I cracked a section of the notebook. Emily, these aren't just numbers, they're dates and locations. Some correspond to known historical events, covert operations. It's real." Emily felt the weight of it hit her. "You're sure?" "Yes. Your dad may have been involved with intelligence work, possibly even working for or with federal agencies. This garage, it was a cover." That night, Emily drove to the garage, parked, and walked around the property with a flashlight. She felt watched. A shadow moved across the alley behind the building. When she turned to look, it was gone. Back inside, she checked the office. One of the drawers had been disturbed. A file folder was missing. Someone had been here, and they were looking for something. Terrified, Emily returned home and found Sarah and Mia safe, asleep on the couch. She locked every window, every door, and sat on the floor with her back to the wall. Her phone buzzed. No caller ID. She answered. A voice on the other end spoke in a low whisper. "Stop digging. Sell the garage, or your daughters won't be safe." The call ended. Emily sat frozen, heart racing. This wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a threat. For the first time, she considered running, packing a bag, grabbing the girls, disappearing. But something in her gut held her there. She had been trusted with something important, and no matter how afraid she wasn't ready to give up. Emily spent the night curled up in the corner of her living room, a kitchen knife within arm's reach. Every creak in the building made her heart race. She checked on Sarah and Mia every half hour. They slept peacefully, unaware of the darkness circling their lives. At dawn, Emily made a decision. She called Ben. "We need to find out exactly what's in that garage. All of it." By noon, they were back at the shop. Ben brought his laptop, notebooks, and a scanner. Emily locked the doors behind them. They spent hours going through drawers, shelves, and boxes. Hidden inside an old toolbox was a small wooden case. Inside, foreign currency, 2 flash drives, and a folded sheet of paper with a symbol, an eye inside a triangle, and the words, "Project Sentinel, Level 4 Access." Ben's face went pale. "This is government grade," he whispered. "You realize people have probably been following you?" Emily nodded. "They already called. They threatened my kids." Ben looked at her. "Then we can't waste time." He started scanning everything. That evening, Emily went home to find Mark waiting by her front door. He looked uneasy, not angry, nervous. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms. "About what? The money? The threats?" Mark looked around, then leaned in. "You don't know what you're sitting on. That garage, it was used. By Dad. By other people. Government people. Secret stuff. They want it kept quiet." "Then why do you want it?" she asked, voice sharp. "I'm trying to protect you and myself. I already gave them your name. I told them you didn't know anything, but they don't care." Emily's stomach turned. "You sold me out? I thought you'd sell. I thought this would be over already." She pushed past him, trembling with rage. The next day, she got a call from Ben. "Emily, the flash drives. They're encrypted, but I cracked one. It has logs, names, transactions, movements. Your dad, he helped smuggle refugees, activists, journalists in danger. He wasn't a criminal. He was a protector." Emily sat on the floor of the office, staring at the drives in her hand. "My dad was a hero? A quiet one, but yeah, looks like it." For the first time, she cried, not from fear, from pride. But it didn't last long. That night, she heard footsteps outside her apartment window. Then, the front door handle jiggled. She called the police, but by the time they arrived, whoever it was had vanished. No signs of forced entry, no prints, just a matchstick on the doormat. The message was clear: we can get in if we want to. The next morning, Emily packed bags for the girls. "You're staying with Aunt Karen," she told them, "just for a little while." "Are we in trouble?" Sarah asked. "No, baby," Emily said, trying to smile. "I'm just making sure you're safe." With the girls out of harm's way, Emily returned to the garage. This time, she took her father's note from her wallet and read it again. "What matters most isn't always shiny. Trust your gut." She walked to the back wall of the office, where an old cabinet stood bolted to the concrete. Something about the shape of the wall behind it had always bothered her. She moved the cabinet aside and tapped on the drywall. Hollow. She ran her fingers across the surface until she felt a notch, barely visible. She pressed it. Click. A panel slid open, revealing a small steel door with a keyhole. She reached into her pocket and took out the key her father had left her the day of the reading. It fit perfectly. She turned it slowly. Inside was a hidden room no bigger than a walk-in closet. But what it held took her breath away. Shelves lined with gold bars, cases of rare coins, a small safe marked classified, and pinned to the wall, photos of her father with diplomats, military officers, and people in distress. Children, families, women in headscarves, every one of them smiling. Her father had saved lives, and no one had known. There was one last letter inside the safe. Emily, if you found this, it means you didn't give up. You stayed strong. You trusted yourself. That's why I left it all to you. Not because I had favorites, but because I knew only you would protect the truth. Emily sat on the floor, surrounded by shadows and light, and let herself grieve. Not for the man she thought her father was, but for the one she never truly knew. Then she stood up, and she made a choice.